After reaching the great hall, he went on up, leaving the stair where it led to the gallery. He followed the narrow passage that joined the windows, each of which had an opening onto the hall, which was as wide as a window, that is, about 6 feet. This passage, in ancient times, had been used by the sheriff's minstrels. After taking a few steps, he froze. There was, or so he fancied, a light footstep in the hall below. He held his breath, holding the candle in front of him. There was a double window immediately to his left, which faced the river, so there could be no sight of the candle from within the college, but anyone looking at the keep from Jesus Green on the other side of the river would see a flickering light. But that couldn't be helped. He wanted to know who or what was on the main floor of the hall. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he could just make out the whole shape of the hall. There was a fine arch, very similar to that at Headingham Castle, although a little thicker, because of its need to support the stone wall immediately above it, which divided the top story. There on the floor were the rows of bookcases that spoilt the symmetry of the rectangular room. Everything was still. Perhaps it hadn't been a footstep at all, but the creaking of an old piece of wood in one of the cases as it dried out. But there did seem to be a shadow in one of the windows. In fact, the one to the left of the fireplace, immediately below the window, he was anxious to examine. Gritting his teeth, he decided to go down and confront whoever was there, or more likely, the image that his imagination had conjured up. He turned back to the stairwell, but just as he began to descend, failing to shield the candlelight from the draught made by his movement, the candle went out. In the dark he swore under his breath and searched for the matches. The sound of a soft footstep came again, and this time he was sure it was not just his imagination. Without the candle he found he could still see a little. Outside it was a clear night, and it was only a week before the Paschal moon. Since the old windows had neither shutters nor curtains, the starlight, combined with the light from the half-moon, made it possible to make out the opening from the stairway to the hall. However, if there were someone lurking in the shadows, then with the absence of a candle, their eyes would have adjusted to the dim light better than his. They might have been observing all his movements. He passed into the hall and stood perfectly still, forcing himself to control his breathing, as he recalled that in different parts of the college, 2 people had recently been struck from behind, one fatally. He turned quickly, sensing something behind him, but there was nothing except an old bookcase. But there was a blur of movement, or so it seemed, in the opposite corner, the one from which the smaller staircase ran, exactly opposite the main staircase. He fumbled with a match and relit the candle, forcing himself to overcome his fear as he went systematically between all the standing bookcases. Either his imagination had played tricks, or there really was a spiritual presence, or, though this was the idea he disliked most, there had been another person in the hall, a person who had observed his entry and who had then retreated by means of the secondary staircase.